So for those of you who like the Hyrule cam and want to make your own kind of unique cam, I wanted to make a quick video showing you how to make the Hyrule cam. A word of warning, if your cam isn't realistic, meaning the follower wouldn't be able to hit the next point on your cam when it's going up and down along your camshaft, then that cam won't actually work. And hopefully you'll sort of get these concepts as you go, but it has to be something that the follower can follow. Meaning the next point can't just be a drop or just a sudden rise that wouldn't make logical sense. And as you're playing with it, hopefully you'll figure these things out all on your own. But that's just a quick warning. But I wanted to make this video to kind of explain some simple rules, some simple standards that you need to follow if you want to make your own individual cam, your own creative cam. And so this one I'll show you how I did it, but also the things that I take into consideration while I'm doing it to make sure that it's a cam that I can actually work with when I put it on my camshaft with the work planes and everything. Let's go ahead and file new, standard part, and let's start a new sketch on our XY plane. And then I'm actually going to put in an image. And where did I get this image? Well, I saved it into my project folder from the internet. So I found this random image of what I wanted to use, which is the Hyrule cam. And let's open it and drop it in. And so, again, I found this image and I saved it from the internet into my project folder. And that's the only way I can access it, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize it. So I'm going to tell it to be, let's tell it to be 2.5 inches tall, just to give myself something to work with. That way, okay, it's a little bit short, and we can make it smaller if we want to. That doesn't really matter. You can play around with your own dimensions. This is just an example. But the next thing is, well, I want to know where my center is going to be. So I'm going to start with my center axle hole. I'm going to click on my circle, and I'm actually going to draw it at the origin. I'm going to find my origin. And I'm going to tell it to be 3/16 of an inch in diameter for my axle hole. And then more or less, I'm going to put my picture along where I would want it to be. So you might want yours in the center. I wanted mine more towards the top, just for fun. And as you'll see, as we're building this, is more of an art than a science. So I'm going to go ahead and start sketching around this image, which is kind of the point here. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line that's vertically above this circle that I drew. So I'll zoom in a little bit. And I want it to go along my picture here. And you might notice that it's not an exact replica of the image. You can go into more or less detail as you're sketching your own, however much detail you want it to go into. But again, it has to be realistic. You have to keep that in mind while you're building it. But I'm going to go ahead and just draw these two lines just side to side to kind of mimic the image more or less. And I'm going to tell them to be equal in length. So I'm going to use my equal constraint to do that. Then I also want to tell this point to be vertically above this circle at all times. So I'll go to my vertical constraint and I'll click on the center of my circle and click on this point. So they have to line up. And I'm going to tell one of my lines a length for it to be, and let's just click on a line and see what we get. It's almost 1 inch. That's a good standard. Let's go ahead and just tell it to be 1 inch. That way we just have a number to go on, right? And if you don't like it, we can click off. If you don't like where it is, we can drag it up, the picture up just a little bit so that it looks better if you want it to, right? But again, when you're picking your own image and making your own, and it's a good idea to really save often, by the way, that way that's a good reminder. But you can play around with your own dimensions as you are building your own, of course. This is just a quick example showing you how I made this one specifically. But then we want to make this as fully constrained as possible. So I also want to tell, I want to tell this to be an angle, right? So let's click on these two lines that are angled off, and let's tell them the angle they should be. And it looks like it's almost 140 degrees. And that's about the size that I want it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it to be 140 degrees, and you can change your angle however you want. And then I also want to tell it, well, actually I'm going to go ahead and add that towards the end. I want to tell it the height, the distance from our circle to our point here, but I'll add that a little bit later. I'm going to go ahead and click on my arc tool next. And I want to click from this end point down to the center here. And I need to figure out what size I want to be. Again, it's not going to be perfect, and it's not supposed to be perfect. But I'm just going to draw a quick arc here, and then I'm going to go ahead and go on the other side. I want to click, make sure you get that green dot to my 2 points. And I want to tell, it doesn't really matter where I draw it. And in fact, I'm actually going to tell these two to be equal in size at all times. So that way, if I change one dimension, they'll both change at the same time. And again, if it's not centered to your liking, you can move it around. As you see, it is not going to be an exact science. It looks like the picture itself isn't a perfectly symmetrical drawing, and that's okay too. Again, this can't be perfect. That's not the idea. It's just kind of fun, right? So let's see here. Well, I'm going to go ahead and give one of my arcs a radius to work with. And I'm going to tell it to be a little bit straighter than it is. So I'm going to tell it to be 2.5 inches. And if I don't like that, I can change it. I can try out other dimensions as well. So I can tell it to be 2 inches and see how I like that. And maybe I like that 2-inch diameter, or radius, I should say, a little bit better. And the other one, since I told these two arcs to be equal, the other one went ahead and changed in size as well. And now I can go ahead and recenter it to make it more to my liking. And it's not going to be perfect. I can't stress that enough. But the next thing I need to do is I need to tell this arc, and maybe that's the problem, maybe that's why it's not centered. I need to tell this bottom point to be vertically constrained to this circle. And so let's go ahead and give that a try. Let's tell this point down here to be vertically constrained to the center of our circle and see what happens. And yeah, that's actually it. I mean, it's still not perfectly symmetrical picture behind it, but now it is looking a little bit better, I think. And so what else can we look at to play with this? And you might notice, well, hey, Mr. Anderson, this line is going a little bit off angle from this one. So can we fix that? You notice, oh, this is changing in size. That's not an exact angle there. And we told these two sides to be equal. What we can do, let's try this out. Let's go ahead and tell this to be 1 inch as well. Even though the lines are equal in length, their Pythagorean line, their actual length, their hypotenuses are equal, but the widths of them are not. So I'm going to tell that to be 1 inch as well. Let's see. And this is making it look a little bit better. It's looking a little bit more like the shield behind it. Okay, that's kind of nice. So I'll go ahead and recenter it so it's looking where I want it to be. And if I want to change this, maybe I want to change this to, I don't know, 2.5 instead. Let's see if that looks any better. And I'm not sure that it does. I think I liked it better at 2 inches. And again, you'll play with your own. That's kind of the point. And it says there's quite a few dimensions still needed, although it's really not as much as you think. Last thing I really need to do is tell these green lines to, or how far away it's going to be from our center axis here. So I'm just going to click on my circle center, and I want to click on this tip point, and I want to tell it how tall it's going to be, how far away from that. And again, you can play with this however you want. I'm going to tell that to be 0.5 inches in, or a difference in distance, I should say. And you'll notice there's only a couple more dimensions needed, but some of it's purple and some of it's green. And the question is, well, why? Why is that still green? So I'm going to click off dimension, and let's see, well, what's happening? Well, it's changing in height down here. And so, okay, let's go ahead and give that a distance as well. So let's see, from this point to the bottom, how tall do we want that to be? Okay, it's about 2.25. That's, maybe I want it a little bit taller. Maybe I want it to be 2.4 inches in diameter. Or not diameter, length from tip of the top to the tip to the bottom. And if I don't like it, I can change the size, but I can just move this picture down so that's lining up pretty well. And it looks pretty good. I mean, I might want to mess with my dimensions a little bit more, maybe make it a little bit smaller. Maybe we could try 2.2 and see how we like that. Or maybe right in the middle, 2.3. See if that's almost perfect. I mean, that looks pretty dang good if you ask me. I mean, I'm a little biased, but let's go ahead and finish the sketch and extrude it. And the standard, of course, is 3/16 of an inch. That hasn't changed, even though it's a random image that we are building ourselves. We still got the standards for our cams to put it on our axle. And then if I want to put that face on, I'll put the face on at the end, actually. Let's go ahead and put our work planes down. It's still mid-plane between two planes, and so we'll go from the front to the back here, so we get a mid-plane there. And then, of course, we need one in the center, which is why I needed it vertically aligned to the center so I can make my work plane offset. I want it to go right through that center point, so I'll open up my origins, and you'll see if I keep it at 0 inches offset of our XY plane, that it is going right through the center, so that way this cam will work the same as our previous ones, our random new one that we're creating. But if you want the image on there, that's pretty easy. All you have to do is start a new sketch on this face, and you got to grab that image that we had before, and then we would just decal it. So let's go ahead and give it that dimension that we had earlier. Let's, what do we have now? 2.5 inches. And then that should be sized correctly. We can just center it. And actually, it's kind of hard to see if we have it centered. So I'm going to do a little trick here. I'm going to go to the back, and I'm going to see if the outline is hitting around all of it. And if I move it around, it looks pretty dang good. Let's test it out, and we can always go back and edit if we want to. But I'm going to go to my decal. And I want to put this image, it's asking what image, this image on what face? This face. We hit OK, and there it is. And again, if I don't like it, I can always open it up and mess with the sketch some more. And then I would just repeat it on the back. I would start a new sketch on this face and decal it on the back as well.